Light? She was talking about light.
Next month, Project 𝐸𝐥 is coming out. They want perfection, and I'm going to end everything.
Yes, Leela, you will sign.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be a memorable moment.
I am done with this incompetence. Get out!
Portland, a late autumn evening. The wind drifted gently through the maple trees, scattering crimson leaves across the dew-soaked pavement. Inside Finch and Fig, warm yellow lights spilled through fogged glass. Classic jazz hummed from an old speaker in the corner, blending with the faint clink of cutlery against porcelain, the quiet, comforting sound of a place that seemed at peace. Clara Monroe, 56, sat across from her daughter, Sophie, 23. Before them was their familiar dinner: mushroom, pasta, and red wine. Meals like this had once been their ritual, a fragile thread that kept them connected after the heavy divorce 3 years ago. Every month, the same restaurant, the same table by the window. And tonight, like always, Clara tried to keep the conversation light: work, love, the small things that made Sophie smile. "Daniel's doing okay?" Clara asked, her voice as soft as mist. Sophie nodded, her eyes bright. "He's great, Mom. Actually, more than great. Dad. He's happy again." Clara smiled. The word happy dull-edged, yet it still cut deep. She lifted her glass, feigning ease. "Good. Everyone deserves to be happy." Sophie hesitated, as if bracing herself. "Someone special?" Clara asked, though she already knew she didn't want the answer. "Lila," Sophie said, her eyes glistening. "Lila Hart, Dad's new wife." The words dropped slowly, each one hitting the table like a small stone. "She's wonderful, Mom. She's perfect." The air in the cafe didn't change, but for Clara, everything froze. The jazz went silent. The chatter around them dissolved, leaving only her daughter's voice clear, bright, merciless. Perfect, one word, yet it pierced through the thin skin of composure and lodged deep in her heart. Clara kept smiling, that smile polite, gentle, trained through decades of lawyers' dinners where pain had to stay invisible. "Perfect, huh?" she said lightly, calm, enough to make Sophie relax and go on. "Yeah, she's so thoughtful. She does yoga, she's vegan, and she's always so positive. Dad says she brought light back into his life." Each word positive, light, happy pricked Clara like a fine needle. She nodded, smiling, hiding the wound that was slowly tearing open inside her. Sophie continued, innocent to the cruelty of it all. "Mom, I think you'd really like her. Maybe you two could talk sometime." She said she wants the whole family to feel connected again. That word, family, made Clara's breath falter. What family? The one she had built over 18 years, now belonging to another woman? She only nodded, saying nothing. Outside the window, the wind swept through the trees. A leaf clung to the glass, trembled, then fell. In that moment, Clara realized her daughter wasn't trying to hurt her. Sophie simply believed the world truly held perfect people. But that realization didn't soften the pain. It only made it orderly. "Mom, are you okay?" Sophie asked when her mother stayed silent. Clara set her glass down and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm glad your father's happy." Her voice was smooth as still water, calm, but impossibly deep. Sophie sighed with relief and turned back to her pasta. She began talking about work, her travel plans, her new boyfriend. Clara listened, nodded, responded as if her mind were still there. But inside, another tide was rising, quiet, cold, and fierce. Perfect. The word replayed in her head like a song off key. Perfect. How perfect was she, really? Perfect in stealing another woman's husband? Perfect in charming her daughter with a crafted image? Or perfect in turning a once strong woman into something expendable? Clara couldn't remember paying the bill, leaving the cafe, or driving home. everything blurred into fog. Only when the door closed behind her did she let herself collapse onto the sofa, her hands trembling. In the dark house, silence echoed. On the wall hung a family photo, Daniel young, confident, Sophie radiant with laughter, and Clara smiling like someone who still believed the world was fair. Now, looking at it, she saw something almost foolish in that woman's eyes. A tear slid down her cheek, but she wiped it away instantly, not out of strength, but out of pride. She whispered, barely audible, "Perfect, huh? Let's see about that." In that moment, amid the hush of the house and the soft drizzle outside, something inside Clara broke, but not to weaken. It broke to be reborn. Outside, Portland kept turning. People still loved, still betrayed, still called someone perfect. But that night, in the small house on Maplewood Street, a woman discovered something new. Silence can be the loudest explosion of all. Winter came late to Portland, but when it did, it cut straight through the skin. Every morning, Clara woke up in her small wooden house on the outskirts of town, where the sound of rain on the roof beat like the heart of someone who had stopped hoping. The house had once been full of laughter, the smell of waffles at breakfast, Daniel reading the paper, and Sophie singing in the shower. Now there was only the hiss of the kettle and the sound of her own breathing. On the kitchen table lay the morning paper, featuring a photo of Daniel Reed and Lila Hart, the city's new successful and inspiring couple. Lila wore an ivory dress, standing beside Daniel at a charity gala. Below it, the caption read, "Daniel Reed, Distinguished Attorney of Reed and Monroe LLP, and his new wife, personal growth coach Lila Hart, share their happiness after divorce." Clara's eyes rested on the words Reed and Monroe, the names she and Daniel had built together for over 20 years. Now, only Reed remained. Her name had been erased as if she had never existed. She let out a dry laugh. "Perfect couple," she murmured, sipping her cold coffee. Something rusted in her throat, not from the drink, but from the quiet bitterness that had settled around every thought. That afternoon, Sophie called. Her voice was bright, easy, as if the cracks of the old world had never existed. "Mom, Lila's hosting this wellness brunch on Sunday. She asked if you'd like to come." Clara was silent for a long beat. "Brunch?" she repeated. "Yeah, she said she really wants to get to know you. She thinks it's time we all move forward." Move forward. The words slid over her skin, smooth, cold, and slippery. "My love," Clara said slowly, "people only invite you over once they're sure you're no longer a threat." "Mom, she's not like that," Sophie protested softly. "She's really nice. You'll see." Clara didn't argue. She only said, "Enjoy the brunch, sweetheart. I already have plans." When she hung up, tears came not for Sophie, but for the truth that her daughter now trusted a stranger more than her own mother. That night, Clara stepped out onto the porch, wrapping herself in the old wool scarf Sophie had knitted in high school. The sky was pitch black, lit only by the warm glow from a neighbor's window. She looked at the garden, the rose bushes stripped bare, their leaves burned brown by the frost. She touched a branch, the chill biting like the memory of something long dead. "Maybe I'm decaying too," she whispered. In the days that followed, Clara kept her rhythm. She worked part-time at the local library, reading to the elderly and helping college students with legal research. No one there knew she had once co-founded one of the largest law firms in the state. No one knew she had argued in federal court and won what the legal world called a landmark victory. Now, she was simply Mrs. Monroe at the old books counter. A young coworker once said to her, "You seem like someone who's been through a lot but still smiles." Clara only replied, "A smile is the last thing I have left." At night, she turned on the TV. A commercial came on. Lila's glowing face filled the screen, in a video titled "Rebuild Your Glow, the Lila Hart Method." Her syrupy voice declared, "Pain is just the universe asking you to realign with your higher self." Clara picked up the remote and turned the TV off. "You don't know a damn thing about pain," she whispered. But in that moment, as the black screen reflected her own face, Clara saw something strange. The eyes in the reflection no longer belonged to a defeated woman. Something flickered behind the exhaustion. A small spark, faint, but real. That night, she didn't sleep. She rummaged through the drawer for old photos, Daniel, Sophie, and Lila, the woman who had burst into her life, like a golden flare across a darkened sky. Clara stared at each picture, unblinking. Then she turned on the lamp, sat at her desk, and wrote a single sentence on a sheet of paper. Perfection is always hiding something. The pen pressed so hard it tore through the page. She sat still, listening to the rain outside, as the first true, unforced smile in months appeared on her lips. The next morning was still gray, but something in her had shifted. No more tears. No more fear. Only the silence of someone beginning to calculate. Clara opened her laptop and typed Lila Hart into the search bar. Hundreds of images appeared. Lila on stage, beaming beside Clara's ex-husband, posing with admiring middle-aged women. Beneath them, thousands of comments. "She's amazing. Such an inspiration. Perfect." That word again, perfect, but this time, Clara didn't feel pain. She felt curiosity. And within that curiosity, there was the scent of something dangerous, like the first crackle of electricity in a storm that's still forming. She murmured, low and steady, "Let's see how perfect she really is." Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, blanketing the dead garden in white. Inside the small house, a woman had reached the bottom of her loneliness, and from that depth, she began to rise. Not with tears, but with the cold intelligence and patience of someone who has lost everything, and therefore has nothing left to fear. Have you ever reached a point where it felt like you'd lost it all, only to realize that pain was what finally woke you up? Comment 1 if you believe time heals everything. Comment 2 if you believe only action can heal what's broken. The Portland night was thick with mist. The house on Maplewood Street lay silent, lit only by the glow of a desk lamp spilling across the page. Clara was writing on. The words "perfection is always hiding something" sat in the center of the paper like a vow. She stared at them for a long time, then wrote beneath, "Let's find out what." For the first time in months, Clara felt her blood heat, not from pain but from purpose. Her loneliness had simmered long enough to turn into energy. The winter chill made her sharper, more awake than ever. She stood, opened her laptop. The name Lila Hart appeared once more on the screen, this time not as an image, but as a battlefield. Instagram, website, LinkedIn. All of it gleaming like a wall of illusions. Photos of Lila in yoga poses, in white dresses at retreats titled Healing the Divine Feminine. Beneath every post, thousands of comments. "You're a light. You're perfect." Clara smiled, a thin smile, cold as steel. "Perfect people don't exist, darling. Only perfect lies do." She began to read. Every caption, every comment, every hashtag. The sugary words about self-love, energy alignment, and truth stung like insults. But amid the irritation, Clara noticed something. Lila had a system, and every system had a flaw. Every time Lila posted, she tagged brands, spas, luxury retreats, a whole ecosystem of wellness luxury, but built entirely on borrowed pieces. Clara opened each tag, tracing business registrations, addresses, tax numbers. All legal, except one, Sterling Wellness Studio, a name that appeared on nearly every post. No tax record in Oregon, no business license, no corporate filing, only a PayPal account. A small crack, but for a former lawyer, it was a door wide open. Clara leaned back, breathing deeply. The first spark flared in her mind, and it was beautiful, like light glinting off a blade. The next day, Clara went to a cafe near the library, quiet, tucked away. She ordered a black espresso, opened her laptop, and began building a new identity. Name, Elena Ruiz. Age: 48. Occupation: divorced marketing executive seeking to rebuild her confidence through wellness. She created an Instagram account using a stock photo, a brunette woman in expensive workout clothes. Every detail: the bio, the captions about balance and gratitude, the perfectly staged breakfast photos crafted like evidence. If Lila lived by illusion, Clara would create one even more convincing. After a few hours, she hit follow. 2 days later, Lila Hart replied with a direct message. Hey, Elena, thank you for following. Your energy feels amazing. Are you into yoga or self-work? Clara read the message over and over. Your energy feels amazing. A line Lila had likely sent to hundreds of women, but this time, it was the spark that set fire to Clara's restraint. She hit reply. Hi Lila. I've heard wonderful things about you. I'm looking for private coaching. Life has been complicated lately. The message sent. Clara's hands trembled, but not from fear, from adrenaline. For the first time, she was the one stepping into the enemy's domain. 3 days later, an email arrived. Lila had agreed to meet Elena at Morning Finch Cafe downtown, a free energy assessment session. Sunday morning, Portland drizzled softly. Clara put on a long camel coat, tied her hair into a bun, and wore glasses unlike her usual pair. Nude lipstick. Voice lowered a tone. The woman in the mirror was no longer Clara Monroe. She was Elena Ruiz, a soul in search of healing. She arrived early, choosing a quiet corner by the window. 15 minutes later, Lila entered, tall, wavy blonde hair, a smile crafted to perfection. She glowed, truly perfect. And it was that perfection that made Clara's skin crawl. Hi, Elena? Lila's voice sang like a melody. Hi, Lila, Clara answered, polite smile, gentle eyes. They began to talk. Lila spoke in fluid, musical tones about the universe, energy, self-love. Clara nodded, taking mental notes. The longer she listened, the clearer it became. Lila knew nothing about healing. She just sold hope wrapped in pretty words. Then came the topic of price. Lila placed a hand over her heart, eyes glowing with practiced compassion. My private coaching starts at $400 an hour. But for women who are truly committed to transformation, I offer a full-month package for $4,000. You'll see your life change in ways you never imagined. Clara raised an eyebrow. And payment up front, I assume? Lila smiled. Of course. Energy works best when the exchange is clear. Energy exchange, another word for money. Clara nodded, her eyes glinting cold. Then maybe, Lila, she said slowly. It's time someone helped you realign yours. Lila didn't understand. She just smiled brighter, extending her hand. Welcome to your new life, Elena. Clara took it lightly, but with eyes sharp as a blade. Thank you, she said. I can't wait to begin. That night, Clara opened her notebook and wrote another line beneath the first. Every illusion leaves a footprint. Outside, the rain had stopped. The faint moonlight filtered through the window, glinting across her slow, deliberate smile, a smile that sent chills because it didn't belong to someone broken. It belonged to someone awake. Clara Monroe, the woman once branded a loser, had just reborn herself. No more tears, no more pleading. Only intellect, patience, and a plan Lila Hart would never see coming. Inside that small Portland room, a spark had ignited. And when fire begins to burn, it's always the ones who think they're perfect who burn first. Portland, late January. The rain had stopped, but the skies still hung heavy with lead. Clara Monroe opened her laptop, setting it beside a steaming cup of tea and a printed file labeled Elena Ruiz's coaching plan. Inside, each glossy page was filled with Lila Hart's shimmering vocabulary: manifestation, energy detox, sacred abundance. To the untrained eye, it might look like a philosophy of life, but Clara saw it for what it was, a contract wrapped around a con. Every time Elena attended a coaching session, Clara recorded it, a tiny recorder hidden inside her Fitbit. Lila never suspected a thing. She spoke freely about clients, about the successful women entrepreneurs pouring money into her hands, about spiritual secrets lifted straight from overseas blogs. "People pay me for hope," Lila once said, as if confessing something holy. "Hope sells better than truth." That line nearly took Clara's breath away. If truth was a weapon, she had just picked up a bullet gilded in gold. But Clara didn't just want to ruin Lila with words. She wanted to build a case, something airtight, something that would strip away not just reputation, but everything. And for that, she needed an expert. Monday morning, she called Nora Patel, an old friend from Harvard Law, now a private investigator in San Francisco. "Clara Monroe?" Nora's voice burst through, half shock, half delight. "It's been 10 years. You calling because you miss me, or because you need something?" "Both," Clara said evenly. "I need everything you can find on a woman named Lila Hart." A pause, then Nora's tone softened. "This isn't personal curiosity, is it?" Clara closed her eyes, hearing again that voice in the rain-soaked night. "She's perfect." "No," she said, "it's justice." 2 weeks later, an encrypted email arrived. Subject: Lila Hart. Background summary. Clara opened it, and each line made her blood grow colder. Credit card debt, $68,000. Declared income, less than half her rent. Main funding source, gifts from divorced businessmen. 2019 lawsuit, accused of bookkeeping fraud by a yoga partner in Nevada, settled out of court. Unpaid taxes, $9,400 still active. Clara leaned back, her hand trembling slightly. Not from fear, from cold exhilaration. Lila wasn't just a fraud. She was a criminal. Attached were photos, Lila holding hands with a gray-haired man at a Las Vegas retreat. Lila at a luxury bar, champagne in hand. Lila smiling that same practice smile that once enchanted Daniel, now looking hollow, false. "She lives by draining the people she seduces," Nora wrote. Classic type, angel on the outside, vampire underneath. Clara reread every word, each detail a puzzle piece, each piece a blade. And she began assembling them slowly, precisely like a surgeon, cutting open a heart without anesthesia. The next day, Elena Ruiz showed up for another coaching session. Lila arrived 10 minutes late, looking tired but still flashing her inspirational smile. "Sorry, Elena. Crazy morning. Just got off a call with my accountant," she said, glancing at her brand new iPhone. Clara tilted her head slightly. "Business doing well, huh?" Lila laughed. "Always. My clients are amazing. I help women find their truth, and their husbands usually thank me later." That line made Clara think of Daniel. Lila hadn't just stolen a husband. She was proud of it. Clara smiled, calm and composed. "Sounds powerful, Lila. You must have a gift." "Maybe," Lila said, swirling her latte. "Or maybe I just know what people need to hear." That sentence echoed in Clara's mind all night. She replayed the recording over and over, listening to the smooth tone, the self-satisfaction. Then she wrote in her notebook, "She weaponizes empathy, uses kindness as bait." She knew that line would go into the professional misconduct report. But it wasn't enough. She wanted something deeper, something that would burn away Lila's mask completely. A few days later, Nora called back. "Clara, I dug further. Sterling Wellness Studio, her so-called company, isn't registered in Oregon, but she's taking payments from Oregon clients. That's a federal violation of interstate business law." Clara froze for a beat, then let out a quiet laugh. "Thank you, Nora. You just found the red thread. What are you going to do with it?" Clara's voice was soft as breath. "Unravel the whole rug." That night, she sat alone by the window, laptop glowing. A new file was created, Project 𝐷, short for Expose Her. Inside, a detailed plan. Step 1. Record ethical violations. Step 2. Verify tax and licensing infractions. Step 3. Prepare anonymous dossiers for regulatory boards and the press. Clara placed her hands on the keyboard but didn't type yet. Moonlight fell across them, the same hands that once trembled from loss, now steady again. A breeze slipped through the window, rustling the curtain. Raindrops tapped faintly on the porch roof. She gazed into the dark garden and whispered to herself, "Some people think revenge is fire, but real revenge is ice." Somewhere across the city, Lila Hart slept soundly on her expensive bed, believing the world still adored her. She didn't know that, just a few miles away, a woman was weaving the coldest storm she would ever face. When someone takes everything from you, would you let the past rest or reclaim justice with your own mind? Comment 3 if you'd let the past sleep. Comment 4 if you believe truth deserves the light, no matter the cost. Morning in Portland was cold and damp, like silk draped in fog. The streets still glistened from night rain, and every step left a faint echo against the quiet. Inside her study, Clara Monroe sat before the wide window, a pen balanced between her fingers, a single candle flickering beside her. The glow touched the file open on her laptop. Project 𝐷. Her plan was finished now, every step mapped, every move rehearsed. But Clara knew one thing with the kind of certainty that only comes from pain: the perfect plan was never about attack. It was about control. A masterpiece of patience that made your enemy pull the trigger themselves, smiling as they did it. A week later, Elena Ruiz, Clara's flawless alter ego, arrived early for Lila Hart's morning yoga class. She wasn't just a client anymore. She had become the kind of devotee every wellness guru dreams of: eager, admiring, perfectly malleable. Clara followed every instruction, matched every pose, even mirrored the shallow serenity in Lila's tone. She let herself look enchanted. After class, as sunlight streamed through the studio windows, Lila tossed her golden hair and smiled. "Your energy's different lately," she said. Clara tilted her head, voice smooth and warm. "Because I'm learning from the best." Lila laughed, soft, self-satisfied, certain she was adored. And in that laugh, Clara heard arrogance, the sweetest sound a strategist could hope for. Fool! This woman would fall, not by force, but by faith in her own perfection. During a break in conversation, Clara lowered her voice, dropping the first bait like a pearl. "Have you ever thought about expanding your brand?" she asked. "You're too talented to stay local. What you do deserves a bigger stage." Lila's eyes lit up as if someone had opened a window inside her. "Funny you say that. I've been wanting to move into corporate wellness. Companies pay big for that kind of thing." Clara smiled, calm, encouraging. Then maybe the universe is listening. Inside, her pulse didn't quicken. She had learned to move at the rhythm of inevitability. 2 days later, the bait dangled through an email. Subject: Corporate Wellness Opportunity. Lila, I know a company looking for a wellness consultant for their executive team. They want someone innovative, authentic like you. Would you like me to introduce you? Elena. Lila's reply arrived in less than 10 minutes. "Oh my God, yes. You're an angel. Send me everything." Clara leaned back, rereading the message. Not joy, what she felt was the cool satisfaction of a chess master sliding a single pawn and watching the board change shape. People like to say revenge burned hot. For her, it was cold, slow, like ice melting on the tongue. The company Clara knew was Real North Pacific Exports, a Seattle import-export firm she had represented years ago. It had survived a small labor regulation scandal once, barely worth remembering. She remembered everything. With a few careful edits, the company became the perfect facade. She drafted a pristine company brief: flexible ethics, global growth, executive well-being program. The language looked expensive, confident, and morally gray in all the right places. She registered a new email domain, north-pacificexports.com, one letter away from the original. She attached the logo, formatted the signature, even added a legal disclaimer at the bottom. Authenticity was always found in the details. When Lila received the materials, she didn't hesitate for a heartbeat. Wow, she breathed during their next session, eyes wide with awe. This could change everything. Clara smiled, the expression soft as a knife's reflection. It usually does. They met again at Morning Finch Cafe, the same corner table where the game had begun months earlier. Rain streaked the windows while the espresso machine hissed in the background. Lila talked nonstop, hands painting the air with visions of the future retreats in Hawaii, corporate workshops in Singapore, maybe a book deal. She spoke the language of dreamers who confuse attention for destiny. Clara listened, quiet, the foam on her cappuccino slowly collapsing. Every word confirmed what she already knew. Lila would drown herself, she only needed enough applause to jump. "Can I trust them?" Lila asked finally, lowering her voice, as if the cafe walls were listening. "You know, legally?" Clara shrugged with just the right amount of hesitation. "I used to work with them. Their legal department's flexible." Lila grinned. "Flexible's good, so am I." Clara almost laughed. The woman had no idea she had just sealed her fate with a joke about flexibility. That night, the final email went out under North Pacific Export's letterhead. "Dear Miss Hart, we were impressed by your approach. Please find the draft agreement attached. Note, confidentiality is essential due to our international operations." The contract was immaculate, professional, convincing, and laced with landmines. Hidden in the fine print were 2 clauses that could legally implicate the consultant if the company were ever investigated for tax or labor violations. A real businessperson would notice instantly. A narcissist chasing validation would not. Clara didn't need Lila to commit a crime. She only needed her to look like she had. 3 days later, Lila replied, signed and sealed. "I can't thank you enough, Elena. You just changed my life." Clara read the words aloud, barely a whisper. "Not yet, darling," she said. "But I will." The following week, Instagram exploded with the announcement. A photo of Lila holding a champagne flute, glowing in golden light. "So excited to announce my partnership with an international company for executive wellness consulting. The universe truly rewards alignment. Number perfect life. Number boss woman. Number grateful." The post caught fire, thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. Daniel typed, "Proud of you, Lila." Sophie reposted it. "She's unstoppable." Clara read every word. Her chest tightened, not from jealousy anymore, but from a deeper calm. This was the quiet that came before thunder. She saved the post, took screenshots of every comment, then opened Project 𝐷. Beneath the last entry, she typed, "Target has taken the bait. Documentation begins now." That night, heavy rain swept across Portland. Thunder rolled low and patient. Lightning sliced the clouds in white veins. Inside her study, Clara sat at her desk, the glow of the screen painting her face in ghostly light. On it, Lila smiled, frozen mid-celebration, blissfully unaware that the ground beneath her was already cracking, inch by inch. Clara reached out, touched the image as if closing the eyes of someone who didn't yet know she was dead. Her voice was barely audible, but it carried the weight of a storm. "Sleep well, Lila. The storm's coming, and you're the one who invited it." Outside, lightning flared again. For a heartbeat, the whole house blazed white. Then the dark returned, quiet, patient, waiting. And in that dark, Clara Monroe smiled for the first time in months. The board was set. The queen had moved. And somewhere out there, perfection had just signed its own demise. Portland, March. The sky no longer rained, it emptied, as if someone were shaking waters straight from the heavens. Clara Monroe sat in her small kitchen, a cup of tea cooling beside her. On the table, her laptop was open, an email already composed. To North Pacific Compliance Department, subject, urgent, background check on external wellness consultant. The message was brief, professional, not a single comma out of place. She attached every document: Lila's tax filings, her unregistered LLC papers, the contract with its risky clauses, and screenshots of her self-congratulatory posts. No false accusations, no emotional words, only facts arranged in perfect order sent to the perfect place. Clara took a deep breath and clicked send. A soft whoosh filled the air. A small sound, yet to her, it echoed louder than thunder. 3 days later, the first message from Lila Hart arrived at 9:27 p.m. Elena, oh my God, can you believe this? That company you introduced me to just emailed me they're suspending our contract. Some nonsense about a compliance review. What's happening? Clara sat still, her fingers gliding across the keys. I'm sure it's just procedural. These companies do background checks all the time. Don't worry. A simple, harmless reply. But as she sent it, her lips curved not in joy, but in the quiet satisfaction of watching the wheel of karma begin to turn. The next day, the story broke across social media. Wellness influencer Lila Hart faces compliance issue with corporate partner. A local paper ran a photo of her leaving an office building, her face pale, stripped of its guru glow. In a short video, a reporter called out, "Miss Hart, is it true your contract was terminated over tax irregularities?" Lila avoided eye contact, her voice trembling. "This is all a misunderstanding. My business is perfectly legitimate." Perfectly. The word made Clara smile faintly. "Of course it is," she whispered to no one but the room. Then everything fell like dominoes. The Yoga Wellness Board sent a letter launching an ethics investigation built on the anonymous recordings Clara had submitted weeks earlier. The Better Business Bureau opened a file on income misreporting. Clients began murmuring online. "She revealed my private sessions. She used my photo without permission. I paid, and she canceled without refund." The storm needed no wind. It arrived through lines of text, through emails, through posts. No shouting, no blood, yet everything around Lila began to rot from within. Clara watched it all in silence. No cheers. No triumph. Just notes, records, files. Each article, each comment, each video one more piece of evidence, marking the perfect collapse of the perfect woman. That evening, she stepped out onto her porch. The rain was still falling. Its rhythm sounded like music, a symphony of retribution. Clara closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of wet earth, listening to the distant rumble of thunder. This is the sound of justice, she thought. It doesn't need to scream, it just needs to fall at the right time. But karma didn't touch only Lila, it reached Daniel, too. One morning, Sophie called, her voice panicked. "Mom, something's wrong with Dad and Lila. He's furious," I heard shouting through the phone. Clara kept her tone calm. "What happened?" Apparently, the company she worked with is under review for tax evasion, and Dad's name is on some of the documents she signed. Clara fell silent, gripping her cup of tea, hiding the flicker of a smile. Did she tell him? No, he found out from their lawyer. "Mom, he's devastated. He said she might have forged his signature." There was a long pause, then Sophie's voice broke. "Mom, she's not perfect, is she?" Clara answered softly. "No, sweetheart. She's just untested." Sophie was quiet, then began to cry. Through her daughter's sobs, Clara felt something loosen, not vengeance, but healing. Not through comfort, but through truth. As for Lila, her world spiraled into chaos. She tried to fight back, posting a video online. "People are jealous. They're trying to destroy me because I'm successful." But no one believed her. Within a week, the video was deleted after waves of backlash. Her bank accounts were frozen, contracts canceled, friends vanished. Her luxury apartment in Lake Oswego received an eviction notice. The same followers who once praised her whispered now, "Karma's real." Meanwhile, Clara quietly tended to her backyard garden. The rose bushes, bare through winter, were sprouting their first green buds. She trimmed the dead branches, dropping them into the bin, just clearing out the hollow parts of life, she thought. One evening, a final message came from Lila. Elena, I don't know what's happening. Everyone's turning against me, the company, the clients, even Daniel. You're the only one I trust. Please, can we talk? Clara stared at the message for a long time. The glow of the screen reflected in her eyes, bright but cold. Then she typed slowly. Of course, Lila. Let's talk soon. Sometimes the universe just wants us to face what we've created. She pressed send and set the phone down. Outside, thunder rolled again. The storm had reached its middle and Clara knew it still hadn't taken its final prize. That night, as the city quieted, Clara sat alone in her study. The laptop glowed with open tabs, emails, news reports, legal filings. Everything she had lost: respect, love, trust, now replaced by one thing: control. She closed her eyes, listening to the wind batter the windows, and whispered to herself, revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about reminding them what truth feels like. Somewhere across the city, Lila Hart sat curled up in her dark apartment, phone clutched in, shaking hands, reading Clara's last message. Thunder cracked, lightning slashed the sky, and in that brief glare, she caught her reflection-smeared makeup, hollow eyes. For the first time, Lila saw herself clearly. No longer perfect, no longer radiant, just a woman devoured by her own words. The storm of karma had arrived, and it was only beginning. If one day, the person who hurt you had to face the consequences of their own making, would you feel satisfaction or peace? Comment 5 if you believe karma always pays its debts. Comment 6 if you believe forgiveness is the greatest victory. An early April morning, Portland had finally stopped raining. The air smelled of wet earth and clean beginnings. Pale sunlight filtered through the windows, threading between the bare branches outside, scattering trembling ribbons of gold across the kitchen walls. Clara Monroe was outside, cutting the first tulips of the season. Their petals, damp and heavy, brushed against her wrists like fragile hearts. She hummed faintly to herself, a habit she'd lost years ago and had only recently found again. Then she heard it, the sound of a car pulling up, tires crunching softly against the gravel driveway. She turned. Sophie stood at the edge of the path, hair tangled, eyes red-rimmed, coat wrinkled as though she hadn't slept. She looked like someone who had run through a storm without realizing she'd already reached shelter. Mom. Just one word, but it carried everything: guilt, sorrow, confusion. Clara set the garden shears down carefully and smiled, gentle but steady. Come inside, sweetheart. The wind's still cold. Inside, the kitchen glowed with quiet warmth. Steam rose from 2 cups of ginger tea, curling in thin, silver threads. Sophie sat at the table, both hands wrapped around her mug, though she hadn't taken a sip. The silence between them was thick, not uncomfortable, but heavy, like the pause before a confession. Finally, Sophie spoke. Dad kicked her out. Clara looked up slowly. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. Why? Sophie swallowed hard. Because she lied. About everything. And then, like a dam breaking, the truth came out in fragments. That Lila Hart hadn't just lied about her income, she had forged Daniel's signature on loan documents. That North Pacific, the company she bragged about, was under federal investigation. That she had been funneling money from Daniel's accounts, hiding debts, falsifying records. That Daniel, humiliated and betrayed, had to hire his own lawyer to protect himself. That the glamorous empire Lila flaunted, her wellness business, her international partnerships, was nothing more than a fragile illusion made of borrowed credit and stolen trust. By the time Sophie finished, her voice was breaking apart. She lowered her head, shoulders trembling. Mom, I was so blind. I believed everything she said. I defended her, even when you tried to warn me. Clara stepped closer, laying a warm, firm hand on her daughter's shoulder. "You just wanted to believe the world still had perfect people," she said softly. "I used to believe that too a very long time ago." Sophie looked up, eyes shining with tears. "Dad told me you tried to be civil to her, that you were kind." Clara smiled faintly, almost wistfully. "Kindness doesn't always mean forgiveness, sweetheart. Sometimes it just means being silent long enough for the truth to do its work." Neither spoke for a long time. Outside, the wind chime on the porch began to sing a delicate, hollow melody. The sound dropped into the stillness like raindrops hitting calm water. For the first time in years, the silence between them wasn't distance, it was understanding. Then Sophie bit her lip, hesitating. "Mom," she whispered, "did you have anything to do with what happened to her?" The question landed between them like a stone on still glass. Clara met her daughter's gaze. She didn't flinch, didn't rush to defend herself. Her eyes were deep and calm like a winter lake that had seen storms and learned not to move for them anymore. "I didn't destroy her, Sophie," she said, every word deliberate. "I just pulled the curtain back so she could destroy herself. But if you hadn't, my dear," Clara interrupted gently but firmly, "even without me, the truth would have come. It always does. Only slower and far more painful." Sophie's lip quivered. A tear slid down her cheek and dropped into the untouched cup of tea, rippling the surface. "Mom, I'm so sorry." Clara reached across the table and took her hand. "There's nothing to be sorry for. Everyone has to learn to see through the world's layer of lipstick." The words broke something inside Sophie, not in pain, but in release. She stood, and Clara rose too, drawing her into an embrace. It wasn't the fragile hug of old wounds. It was the solid, wordless connection of two women who had walked through fire and met again on the other side. That afternoon, they went out into the garden. Sophie helped her mother replant the old rose bushes, her jeans stained with soil, laughter finally spilling between them. "Remember when I used to call you old-fashioned?" Sophie said, cheeks flushed. "Constantly," Clara replied, half smiling. "Well, turns out you were just timeless." Clara laughed, a real laugh, soft and full. For a moment, the world felt light again. Even the broken pieces of the past seemed to glitter under the spring sun. Sophie looked around the yard. The tulips had begun to open, shyly, after months of gray. "Mom, do you think she'll ever recover?" Clara was quiet for a while, watching a small sparrow hop across the soil. "Everyone gets a chance to start over," she said finally. "But not everyone takes it." Sophie frowned. "Do you think she deserves one?" Clara met her eyes. Her voice was low but unyielding. "Deserve is a word for poets. Karma doesn't use it." That night, after Sophie had driven back to the city, the house felt peaceful again. Clara sat in her study, the warm light of a desk lamp wrapping the room in amber. On the table lay an old photograph: Clara, Daniel, and 10-year-old Sophie, smiling in a sunlit garden that looked almost identical to the one outside now. She didn't cry. She didn't even sigh. She simply whispered to the photo, "We're okay now. That's all that matters." Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Clara, thank you for keeping our daughter grounded through all this. I don't know how you did it, but I'm grateful." Clara stared at the screen for a long time, her lips curving into a small, tired smile, not the smile of victory, but of completion. She typed back, "We both learned our lessons, Daniel. Let's make sure Sophie never has to learn them the same way." Outside, the wind shifted direction. The rain clouds were gone, the full moon rose, silver and steady above the quiet rooftops. Inside that small Portland home, the woman once called the loser leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply, not out of relief, but acceptance. The storm was over, no more shouting. No more tears, only the soft light of renewal settling quietly inside her chest. On the corner of her desk, the notebook labeled Project E.H. still lay open. Clara picked up her pen, wrote one last line across the bottom. Justice isn't loud, it whispers. She closed the notebook, stood, and walked to the window. Outside, the tulips glowed in the moonlight red, yellow, violet, hundreds of tiny lanterns burning against the dark. Clara smiled. Inside her, there was no anger left, no thirst for revenge. Only the stillness of a woman who had reclaimed her life and her peace and done it all without ever raising her voice. 2 years later, spring 2026. Portland bloomed after a long, gray winter. Clara Monroe's backyard was alive with tulips, roses, and lavender. The scent of damp earth mingled with the aroma of morning tea. Soft sunlight spilled through the window, painting trembling streaks across the small stone statue she had named Resilience. She tended each rosebud with care, the same hands that once trembled from despair now steady and sure. On the stone table beside her lay a cup of ginger tea, a closed notebook, and an unopened envelope mailed from Nevada. Clara set down her shears, sat, and opened the letter. The handwriting was uneven, timid. Dear Clara, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything, I lost my business, my reputation, and myself. I'm cleaning houses now to pay restitution. I can't sleep without thinking about the people I hurt who didn't deserve it. You were one of them. If you know of any honest work, please. I just need a chance to start over. Lila Hart. Clara laid the letter down, her gaze drifting to the sunlight spreading across the garden. Inside her, there was no fire, no smoke, only the stillness of someone who had walked through a storm and come out whole. She didn't smile, didn't frown, just exhaled softly. The woman who had once been a hurricane in her life was now nothing more than a fallen leaf in the wind. Lila had finally learned the lesson no one could teach her. That perfect isn't the peak, it's the moment just before everything collapses. Clara folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and whispered, "Redemption doesn't come from others. It starts when you stop lying to yourself." That afternoon, Sophie arrived, carrying a bouquet of roses and a wedding magazine. "David wants an outdoor ceremony," she said with a grin. "And I want you to help me choose the dress." Clara laughed. "As long as I don't have to wear matching colors, I'm in." Sophie burst out laughing, a sound that once felt lost forever, now echoing through the garden. They sat on the porch, the sunlight tinting their teacups gold. Sophie looked around. "Mom, this place feels different now. Like it's breathing again." Clara smiled. "Maybe it is. Maybe we both are." A brief silence. Then Sophie asked quietly, "Do you ever think about her?" Clara paused, sipped her tea. "Sometimes. The way you think about last season's storm. It's gone, but never forgotten." "Do you hate her?" Clara's smile was gentle, but her eyes were deep. "Hate's a chain, Sophie. I don't wear chains anymore." When Sophie drove back to the city, the sun was setting over the garden. Clara stepped onto the porch, bathed in a wash of amber light that glowed over the statue of Resilience. She touched its cool surface and whispered, "We survived. We didn't just endure, we rebuilt." Her phone buzzed, the name on the screen, Daniel Reed. She hesitated for a moment, then answered. His voice was rough, quiet. "Clara, Sophie told me you're helping with the wedding plans." "Trying to," she said. "But she's got her own ideas." Daniel chuckled softly, sadness beneath it. "She's always been more like you than she realizes." There was a pause. Then, in a lower voice, he said, "I need to say this before time takes it away. You were right. About her. About me. I'm sorry for the years I made you feel small." Clara looked out at the garden, where the last light of the sun faded into shadow. "Daniel," she said, "you didn't make me small. You just forgot that I was already whole." On the other end, silence, then a long sigh, as though he'd set down a stone he'd carried for years. "Thank you," he said softly. "Take care, Daniel," she replied. The call ended. No bitterness. No sting. Only the serene quiet of a perfect full stop. Night fell. Clara returned to her desk and opened the old notebook project 𝐷𝐞𝐯𝐞, now complete. She turned to the final page, where the words "Justice isn't loud, it whispers" had faded with time. Beneath them, she wrote one last sentence. And sometimes, the whisper is enough to shake the world. She closed the notebook and placed it on the shelf beside family photos, not as evidence, but as a reminder. Some battles are only won with intellect and patience. Morning. The garden glowed beneath the first light of day, roses heavy with bloom, bees humming through the fragrance. Clara watered the soil, then glanced at the statue of resilience. A small sparrow landed on its shoulder and chirped softly. She smiled. "Good morning to you too." In the distance, Sophie appeared, holding a bouquet of wedding flowers, her eyes bright with joy. On her lips was a smile Clara once thought she would never see again, the smile of trust restored, and now they had it back. Not through miracles, but through a mother who had dared to stand in the dark to bring the light home again. When Sophie disappeared down the path, Clara remained in the garden. A soft breeze stirred the red petals, flames dancing in the wind. She whispered, to the past or perhaps to herself, "You thought I was a loser, Lila. But I learned that losers don't vanish. They bloom again quietly, fiercely, beautifully." Sunlight poured across the garden, dazzling, unstoppable. The Portland sky was clear, every trace of storm gone. Clara sat amid the fragrance and the light, a faint smile curving her lips, the gentlest epilogue. Perfection isn't about being flawless. It's about becoming whole again after you've been broken. After all, what is true victory? Comment 7 if you believe victory is when your enemy falls. Comment 8 if you believe victory is when your heart finally finds peace.